The average gas station in America sells somewhere around 100,000 gallons of fuel every month. At $3.50 a gallon, that's $350,000 moving through those pumps. The owner keeps about $1,500 of it, less than 0.5%. That's not a rounding error, that's not an exaggeration, and I can prove it. So the question I want to answer is, how is that possible? And if the fuel margin is that thin, how does any gas station owner survive? Because they do survive. Some of them are genuinely printing money. There are single gas stations in this country generating millions of dollars a year in profit. And almost none of it comes from the fuel, which means something else entirely is going on. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The number that doesn't add up. Let's start with the pump price. Say gas is $3.50 a gallon. That $3.50 doesn't go to the station owner. It goes to a chain of people and organizations who all take their cut before the owner sees anything. First, taxes. Roughly $1.20 of every gallon, sometimes significantly more depending on the state, goes straight to federal and state government. California drivers are paying closer to $1.50 in combined taxes per gallon. The station collects it. They don't keep a cent of it. You're paying a tax bill every time you fill up, and the station is just the collection point. Then the actual cost of the fuel, crude oil at the source, refining costs, pipeline transport, the terminal where the fuel gets stored, the distribution network, the branded additive packages that Shell or BP require to carry their name, and finally, the tanker truck that shows up at 3 in the morning to pump everything into the underground storage tanks sitting beneath the parking lot you're standing on. That entire chain is expensive. After taxes and supply costs, the station is working with somewhere between 25 and 40 cents per gallon. And the station doesn't keep that either. Branded stations pay franchise fees and supply premiums just to carry the brand name on the sign. Independent stations have their own distributor margins to deal with. Either way, more comes off the top. What's actually left for the owner? On a good day, somewhere between 1 cent and 3 cents per gallon. On 100,000 gallons, that's $1,000 to $3,000 per month. From fuel. And here's a small detail that tells you everything about how thin these margins really are. You know how gas is always priced at $3.49 and 9/10? Not $3.50, 349.9. That fraction of a cent exists because when margins are this razor thin, a full cent matters. Dropping the displayed price by 1/10 of a cent while keeping the actual price almost identical has been shown to measurably affect where people fill up. The industry is operating in fractions of a cent. That's how tight this is. In practice, though, it's often even less, because of what happened over the last 20 years that most people in the industry will tell you has been quietly devastating. The fee that changed everything. When you tap your card at the pump, and more than 80% of gas purchases are now paid by card, Visa or MasterCard charges the station roughly 2 to 3% of the total transaction. On a $60 fill-up, that's between $1.20 and $1.80. Before the owner sees anything, here's why that number is so brutal. The credit card fee on a single transaction is often larger than the station's entire fuel margin on that same transaction. You paid $60. The station made maybe 60 cents on the fuel. The card network made $1.50. But crucially, the station can't raise prices to cover it. Gas is one of the most price-transparent, price-sensitive purchases that exists. Studies have shown a 1 cent difference per gallon is measurable in consumer behavior. People will drive a quarter mile out of their way for a penny. So the station can't pass on the fee, they absorb it every time, on every card transaction. In the 1990s, when cash was the norm, this wasn't a problem. But cash payments at gas stations have been falling every single year since. The fee that was once a minor friction has quietly become the single biggest structural threat to fuel margins in the industry. There are stations in high card volume markets where the math works out to a net loss on every gallon pumped. And yet, gas stations are everywhere, still being built, still being bought and sold for millions of dollars. Which means the fuel is not the point, the real business model. Here's where the whole thing flips. The gas isn't the product, the gas is the reason you stopped. Every gallon sold at near cost, sometimes at a genuine loss, exists for one purpose: to get you out of your car and within 20 feet of that door. Because once you're standing at the pump, you're already there. The hard part of retail, getting someone's attention, is already done. And the moment you step inside, the economics of the entire operation change completely. Inside that store, the margins look nothing like the pump. A bottle of water that costs 30 cents to stock sells for $2.50. A hot dog that costs 40 cents to make sells for $2. Fountain drinks, energy drinks, chips, packaged candy, margins of 50, 60, sometimes 70%. The coffee program at a well-run station can generate more monthly profit than the entire fuel operation combined. Lottery tickets carry no inventory cost and a built-in commission. Tobacco has historically been one of the highest margin categories in convenience retail. A car wash bolted onto the back of the lot can add tens of thousands in near pure profit every month. The industry benchmark is that roughly 2/3 of a gas station's total profit comes from inside the store. Not from fuel, from the stuff you bought on the way in or grabbed on the way back to your car. This is why the most successful gas station concepts in America, Wawa, Buc-ee's, Casey's, have all made the same bet. They've invested heavily in the food, the coffee, the in-store experience. Buc-ee's builds locations with over 100 fuel pumps outside and 60,000 square feet of retail inside. The pumps aren't the attraction. The pumps are the parking lot for the real business. They figured out that if you make the inside worth stopping for, you never have to compete on fuel price at all. The store sells itself. Gas is a loss leader, the convenience store is the actual business, and the pump is just a very expensive, very visible advertisement. But then reality happened, because once you understand that, you start to see the entire physical layout of every gas station you've ever been to completely differently. The most engineered room in America. The pumps are at the front of the lot because you see the price from the road. That number, whether it's competitive or just a cent lower than the station across the street, is what makes you turn in instead of driving past. The store entrance is right next to the pumps because you're already out of your car. The decision to go inside costs almost nothing, and the station knows exactly what percentage of people who get out to pump will walk through that door. The coffee is at the back, the hot food is at the back. The things people actually want are placed specifically to make you walk through the entire store to reach them. You pass every impulse item on the way there and on the way back. Every extra second you spend inside is another decision point they've engineered for. The lottery tickets and energy shots and candy are at the register because that's the last moment before you leave. You came in for one thing, you're standing there for 15 seconds while someone's card processes. There's a display right at eye level with items under $3, low enough that no one thinks twice. The lighting, the temperature, the placement of the hot food smell near the entrance, none of that is accidental, and the variety is deliberate too. 40 kinds of energy drinks, a dozen coffee options, a rotating snack wall. It's not abundance for its own sake. More options means more time spent deciding, and more time spent deciding means more purchases. Every single thing about that room is a decision someone made based on decades of data about what makes people stay longer and spend more. You're looking at the world through the wrong lens if you think a gas station is a place that sells gas. It's a convenience retail operation that uses fuel as a traffic driver. Always has been. Here's what I think about every time I pull up to a pump now: that low price on the sign, the one that made you turn in, it might genuinely be costing the owner money. And they're completely fine with that. Because statistically, enough of the people who stopped for the cheap gas will walk inside and buy a coffee and a snack and a bottle of water. Those 3 items just made back everything the fuel lost and then some. The pump didn't make them rich, you did, the moment you walked through that door. Gas stations don't make money on gas, they make money on the 30 seconds after you've already decided to stop. Subscribe if you want more on how the fuel business actually works. There's a lot more to it than most people realize, and I put these out every week.